Hey everybody, it's John Pollock with you, joined in studio by a very special guest. You are familiar with him. He is Eric Young, who you can see Wednesday nights here on Fight Network at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, part of Impact Wrestling. And starting January the 5th, we'll be moving to Tuesday nights in conjunction with the new US TV deal. It's great to have you here in studio, Eric.
Good to be back in Canada, man. I don't get up here as often as I'd like, so it's cool to be here.
Yes. Now, you're actually doing a lot of work with our brother station, the Fantasy Sports Channel. Tell us a bit about how that came about and what you are specifically doing this week.
I'm a fantasy fanatic. I've been playing fantasy football and fantasy hockey for 10 to 11 years. I'm pretty good at it. I consider myself very good at it, if you ask me personally. It's like a huge passion of mine. I think it's something I'd like to do after wrestling, getting into the TV side of doing fantasy sports. It's blown up. It's huge. You know, it's a multi-billion-dollar business. It's all over ESPN, all over Fox Sports, all over ESPN, TSN. It's all over, you know, and it's in all different kinds. But I concentrate on football and hockey. Hockey much more popular here than in the United States, but it's those are my two favorites. I play almost here all year round.
How far back can you go where you've looked at kind of diversifying yourself? I mean, wrestling is just a part of what you do. It's not 100% of everything. I mean, your work on Animal Planet, I mean, is that something that from an early age you realized I'm not going to be doing wrestling forever?
Yeah, I don't, to be honest, I've never had a plan, you know, like I don't ever look too far forward. Something my dad told me when I was very young, and I have actually it's a tattoo on my arm. It says the word change, and nothing in life is guaranteed. Not money, not success, not love, not anything. The only thing that you can count on is change, and I've kind of like lived my life, and like kind of blew my mind. I was like in the 8th grade and had a real terrible day, and he told me that, and it blew my mind. So I never get real high or real low or think too far ahead or think too far back. I just kind of like live right now, like today, and served me really well, you know, but it's, people say you can't wrestle forever. I think I can, and I think it's part of the reason why I don't get hurt, knock on wood. But yeah, I'm a pretty durable guy, but I've never really had any major injuries. I've been wrestling for almost 17 years, and I don't ache, you know, I get sore every now and then, and I'm getting up there in age, but I got a lot of years left, and I'll wrestle for as long as I can, do it at a high level, and I feel I can contribute. But having other stuff is cool, but it's not a plan. It's something I'm passionate about. I've always been into the entertainment side. That's why I love pro wrestling. It combines my two loves of athletics and theater and acting and that kind of thing. On the entertainment side is something I've always been into. I did community theater and improv Olympics in high school and got very good grades in drama class. And if I would have handed in my journal and my written work, I probably would have got honors in high school, but I refused to do that other stuff. So too busy having a good time, I guess, but yeah.
You know, in Ontario, I mean, at the current moment, it's a really hot scene for independent wrestling. Santino Marella has a group out here. There's a promotion called Smash Wrestling, Super Kicked, a lot of great talent that all congregate here. And you were somebody that was one of the major products of Ontario independent wrestling. Take us back to that time and just the difficulties of being able to get across the border, get regular work in the US, because there's so much that Canadian fans, I don't think, understand what you guys had to go through and being that much better to get a job over an American.
Yeah, it's, I mean, things have definitely changed since then, and it's not like, oh, like back in the day I used to have to walk to school uphill in the snow. I'm not saying that. You're right, like right now, pro wrestling is in a boom. Right now in the UK, up here in Canada, like you said, I just did a thing with Destiny last night, actually. It was a surprise and kind of went in there and made my mark. And this is a place where I cut my teeth. You know, this is where I started in Ontario. And I was part of a very special group of guys. You know, there was, 10 or 20 guys that any one of the 10 or 20 could have worked on TV. You know, I was the one that I think pursued it maybe harder than some of the other ones, and I'm not good at anything, and I'm terrible at life, I'm terrible at everything, but pro wrestling is something that I've always been able to do. I knew I was good at it the first day I did it. You know, the very first time I stepped into a ring, anything that they showed me or told me, I could do it right away, and I've always excelled at pro wrestling, and it's the only thing I think in life that I did, and I was good at it right away. You know, I'm terrible at everything else. My spelling's terrible. I'm terrible with math. I'm terrible with numbers. I'm terrible at life. I'm terrible at paying bills. I'm terrible at everything.
Give me a ring.
Pro wrestling, I can do it, and I can do all of it at a pretty high level. But like you were saying, like Ontario, it's a hotbed right now, and there's a lot of good wrestling. But to make that move, to get to the next level was very difficult. You know, being a Canadian, you had to prove that you were worth extra, you know, because there was visas involved and stuff. And to make the TV, it was like, well, maybe we won't hire him. And I know in myself and in Bobby Roode's case, there was definitely times in both companies we were doing tryouts for both TNA and the WWF, WWE, and that our names would come up, and it was like, well, he's Canadian, so they would hire somebody else because it was easier to hire an American.
Sure.
Everything works out for a reason, you know. I believe in fate and things happening how they are supposed to happen. But for me to get my job, I moved to Tennessee before I even had a job with TNA Wrestling. I was never under employment before I moved. I knew that they were interested, but I was worried about them not hiring me because I was Canadian. So I closed my wrestling school, quit my job that I had. It was a very good job. I owned a house in Cambridge, Ontario. I walked to the bank, signed the papers, gave it to my friend, put my clothes and my wrestling stuff in my car, and I drove to Nashville.
Wow.
2.5 weeks later, I signed my first contract, and I've been there for 10 years.
Man, and you go back to that time in 2004, and TNA, they've gone through many iterations, and so have you. You have progressed, and Eric Young has always been a character that's updated itself, has changed very much. And one of the elements in professional wrestling that I thought you excelled at tremendously well was incorporating comedy. And that's easier said than done. We've seen when it doesn't work, and we've seen when it does work. What were some of the keys you found to when you were utilizing that kind of entertainment?
Yeah, I think most people that know me would consider me to be a pretty funny person, and I don't think like being funny is something that you can learn, you know, or it can be taught. It's like you are or you aren't. You know what I mean? Like, and it's a timing thing, and knowing when to say things and when to do things and things like that. It's kind of like an instinct, a comedy instinct. And it's funny, like everyone's like, oh, he's. You know, when I was doing that, I loved it. People were like, oh, is that weird? Like, you know, people that saw me here, guys that saw me wrestle for Neo Spirit or fighting. Sure. You mean, like, I was a wrestler, you know, I was in the main event, and I held the belt, and I was in ladder matches, and this, that. I was a wrestler, you know? And then I got to TV, and I'm cartwheeling, and I'm wrestling women, and I'm doing, you know, drinking beer and stuff. Look, I got 2 television shows because I wasn't just a pro wrestler. I was a funny guy, and I stood out. I wouldn't change that for anything. I had a blast doing that stuff. And it's like you said, it's way harder than people think. Like, you know, if everyone could do it, then people would do it because it's a blast. It's a huge part of wrestling. But I got hired at TNA because I was a good wrestler. I never did a comedy gimmick before that. I didn't get hired because I was funny. I didn't get hired because I was a goofball or any of that stuff. I got hired as a wrestler. And then it progressed into me being funny and having a character. And then that, I mean, there's been 30, 40 layers to the onion on that. I was an evil foreigner, and I was a superhero, and I've done all kinds of different stuff. And I wouldn't change any of that, man. It's cool. I've seen the card from every angle.
Would that be your best advice, that if you have that solid foundation and an ability to just take whatever's thrown at you and just try and make it work, as long as you have that foundation and an open mind to whatever comes out of left field, that you can be that utility guy that they can have trust in, that, hey, we come up with an idea, we know Eric can execute it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, that is, I mean, the ultimate sign of professionalism, you know what I mean? Like, I'm an employee. Like, all the guys that are on the show are employees, and a lot of people think, like, you know, I've been there for 10 years, and I have a lot of say in what I do now. But that wasn't always the case. You know, that's something that needs to be earned. There's a lot of guys that have been there for a couple years. They show up and they say, this is what you're going to do, and that's it. You know, and that's how pro wrestling works. And but to have longevity, you know, and be in this thing, you have to be able to adapt and provide something else. You know, what I mean, like I'm maybe not the greatest at any one thing. You know, I'm not the greatest technical wrestler. I'm not the greatest talker. I'm not the greatest comedy wrestler. I'm not any of those things. But I'm very good at all of it. And that's part of, I've been on TV every week for 10 years. Yeah. Who can say that? You know, very few people. That's probably my ultimate accomplishment in pro wrestling.
You mentioned your time as being this evil foreigner, and I thought when you were all put together as World Elite, great look with the track suits, you were taken away from the comedy element, put in a very serious position, and that was right around the time that the big change came with Eric Bischoff, Hulk Hogan coming in. I always felt there were a lot of legs to that group that was unfortunately kind of lost in that whole transition. Were you disappointed about that? Because you look at that group in hindsight of what that could have grown into with yourself, with Magnus, Doug Williams. There was some great talent there. led by yourself.
Yeah, you if you take things personally in professional wrestling, you'll go crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That was one of my favorite times in my career, because that was like my first time where I could show, like, I'm not just the funny guy, or I'm not just the guy that stands there and is quiet. Like, I can talk, and you can put me in the ring with Kurt Angle and I can keep up, or Booker T or Kevin Nash. Like, I can talk and hold my own with those guys any day. And I thought that then, and I think that today. But it's the World Elite was great, and it's a victim of circumstance. Things changed. A new guard came in, and they went a different direction. So I went a different direction, and that's the nature of entertainment. That's the nature of wrestling, especially. So it's I don't take any of it personally. I changed their opinions pretty quick, and then I started to establish myself in a different way, and here I am in a completely different role, in a completely different time, and with a completely different changing of the guard again. So it happens in wrestling. It's the turnover is very quick.
How about the transition going when you won the title early 2014, and you're getting away from the comedy? And that's not something that just happens overnight. It was
Right.
a transition for you, and you watch your character today, and I think you've made that transition. I think you are one of the best talkers on the show consistently each week. But tell us about that process and the fact that it did take some time to evolve.
Yeah, that is my favorite part of being a pro wrestler. Being a pro wrestler on television is developing that character over time. Like you said, that's not something you can be like, oh, well, today he was funny, and then tomorrow he turns on this guy, and now he's a bad guy. Like, that doesn't happen overnight. You have to set a plan and put it in motion, and then each week it becomes another layer. And it's not like Shakespeare or anything crazy like that, but there is elements of storytelling and character development, and that's something that I've always loved. That's, to me, my strongest probably trait, or my strongest skill set in pro wrestling, is taking a character and being that character and making the people that are watching the show believe that's who I am. And what I'm doing it because I believe in it. It's not transparent. People can't see through it. When I come at the rail, like I'm coming after people, they back away because they're not sure, and that's the ultimate compliment, like it's really cool. And I'm having a blast diving into that kind of like darker, mean, kind of like wild maniac side of a wrestling persona.
Any influences you get when you're trying to get into that kind of space, whether it be pro wrestling or outside, different influences you take with that character?
Yeah, movies are always like a huge part of my look is taken from Taxi Driver, and how I talk and how I use my eyes. A simple thing, and this is a thing that I took from Brian Pillman, which was one of the best guys on the mic ever, is he wouldn't blink. And it's something that people don't realize I'm doing, and I don't think people realized he was doing, but it made him seem intense, because when he talked, he didn't blink. Because when you blink, it's like you're changing your focus. So when you watch me do a promo, you'll notice that I don't blink my eyes, because I'm staring at you, you know what I mean? And it's a subtle thing, but people respond to it. They don't know, you know what I mean? Like, consciously, they're like, oh, he didn't blink, I'm scared of him. But it's that little thing that adds that extra ingredient, you know what I mean? Or as I talk, I move closer to the camera, and that becomes more personal to the person that's watching. I'm not standing static and staring at the guy. As I'm talking, I'm moving closer to it, so it appears like I'm coming at you. You know what I mean? And like little things like that you learn through movies. I learned from being on a television show and learning how I stand and my distance of the camera can change the mood of what I'm saying. And that's part of being on TV. It's completely separate from being an independent wrestler. It's a whole nother skill set that I've learned over time. And I would consider myself to be pretty good at it. And it's my favorite part of pro wrestling.
Yeah, and to that point, would you say your approach to the industry is radically different from a 19, 20-year-old Eric Young and how he looked at it? Is it just night and day?
Night and day. Yeah, it couldn't be more different. I do seminars. I'm doing one this coming Sunday in Hamilton, and I love doing them because I get to help another generation of guys, younger guys that are coming up, that I was never taught how to work on TV. I got to TV and I had to learn as I was going, like times of matches and calling stuff and different elements that you're never taught at a wrestling school, because either they've never been on TV or they don't focus on it because you might not make it to TV. You know what I mean? learning to be a good wrestler doesn't have anything to do with being a good wrestler on TV. There's thousands of great professional wrestlers on the independent scene, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be a good wrestler on television. It's two different things. And the quicker you can realize that, the easier it'll be for you. You could be the best independent wrestler in the world, but that may not ever translate to being a good wrestler on television. It's two completely different things.
As you look approaching 2016, TNA recently announced they're going to be moving to Pop TV. It'll be on Tuesday nights, also here on Fight Network. How would you classify 2015 for the company? Was this a disappointing year? Was this a step back? I mean, how would you categorize everything that's gone down this year for the company?
I mean, for me, it's kind of business as usual. That's how I view it. It's another full year of being on television, and you can slice that any which way you want. That's a win. The move to Pop is obviously a positive move for us, a step up for us. It has much more viewership than Destination America in the United States. It can be viewed in almost triple the amount of homes, so that's huge. You know what I mean? Like, even if we had 80% of Destination America's viewership, we still won't get the viewership that we would have on Pop if we only had 40% of their viewership. You know what I mean? It's a huge opportunity for us to grow, and that's all you can ask for. Now we got to deliver. You know what I mean? It's as simple as that. Like, wrestling fans are critical. You know this, I know this. They're critical.
Never heard of this before.
And I'll tell you right now, like, no one is more critical of what I do than me. When I'm in there, I'm doing the best that I can do. I can only do so much. I mean, I don't get to choose everything, and none of the guys on the shows do. But for us, we just got to pick a direction and then go there. Don't wane, don't falter. Pick what we're going to do and deliver the best pro wrestling product that we can deliver every week. Not one guy is going to change the number or change the company. It doesn't work like that. It's a brand. We have to make the brand strong, grow it on Pop, grow it internationally, and that's what they're doing. Like, we're seen in 160 countries around the world. Like, TNA is the second biggest wrestling company in the world, no matter which way you slice it. It's a mainstream product. It's been on mainstream television for over 10 years, primetime television. That's a massive, massive accomplishment. And I knew that it was, but having my own television shows and researching that and knowing the pressures of that makes me respect what the office has done and what TNA has done for pro wrestling as a whole. We're providing an alternative. If there's not, wrestling's gonna get really stale. This is a great time to be a wrestling fan. WWE, TNA, Lucha Underground, ROH, Chikara, Dragon Gate, the UK is exploding, Canada's exploding. I mean, I am a wrestling fan, but I mean, I wish I was 10 now and I could take every dime I had and buy billions of wrestling DVDs and stuff, and stream shows and House of Hardcore, and like, it's amazing. It's an amazing time to be a wrestling fan. Enjoy it. Just, God, please enjoy it. Like, they're spoiled almost. It's insane.
Tell me a bit about the world title series that's going on right now, because this seems like this was either the most incredibly put together tournament that the guys didn't even know they were a part of at the time it was happening. When you were taking part in these matches, were you aware that this was going to be your whole fall programming? Because no one knew what was going to be on Impact until it was actually announced.
Yeah, no, we knew that it was a huge tournament, but most of the guys didn't know what it was for.
Right.
That doesn't really change our approach. I mean, like I said, I'm in a match with James Storm. I'm going to make that the best match that I can, and I know where we're trying to go with the tournament. So each match is another layer to that storybook, and the ending will be at the end of the tournament. It's cool. I mean, I know New Japan has done it with the Climax or the
G1.
Yeah, the G1 tournament, and that's, we definitely are taking from that idea with soccer and that element of a tournament and group play, and then you got to come out of that, and it's a cool aspect, what I mean, and it's something that I think I would have been really interested in, and it's a cool opportunity for guys that maybe don't get that light and to be seen in a different way, and I mean, I'm still in the tournament, so I enjoy it. I'm a main part of the tournament, so that's cool for me and my career. But I think it's a neat idea, and it was cool for pro wrestling, and a good idea by TNA.
You mentioned just kind of finding TNA's direction, sticking with it. As you look to 2016, beyond that, I mean, what are some steps you would like to see, and TNA taking that next step with this opportunity on Pop, and where Believe me, I think that there's a lot of audience. Yes, there are people that are critical, but I think a lot of them, they look at the talent. This is a tremendous roster of talent, and I think people just want to see everything click for TNA. What are the steps for that to happen?
The steps is like I said. I mean, number one is pick a direction. You know what I mean? Like we need to decide what we're doing, and then do that. You know, don't wane because 1 week is off or it didn't work out exactly the way we wanted it to. You know, injuries happen, and you got to be able to adapt and change on the fly. But we got to decide what we want to show. And for me, you know, we have pound for pound one of the best wrestling rosters out there. You know what I mean? Like there's all kinds of guys that maybe haven't been showcased or haven't been given enough television time that could be, where we can build them and establish them and make them a bigger part. And that's exciting to be part of that. You know what I mean? Like I've been here 10 years, which is crazy. But now I'm a huge, I'm probably the biggest part I've ever been. You know, I'm important to the company. I'm integral to the company, and I'm a big part of the company having success going forward. Like a lot of that responsibility is going to fall on my shoulders in a lot of different ways, and I love that. I mean, like I don't get nervous, but I'm better when I do get nervous, and when I'm given a huge part of the show, like I don't take it lightly. You know, I'm a guy that's considered a veteran or a guy that some of the other guys look up to, and I take that very serious. I always have, and I always will, and to be counted on in your job is a very cool responsibility to have, and I love that feeling.
It's been great speaking with you. He's Eric Young. You can see him Wednesday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern on Impact Wrestling here on Fight Network. And throughout this week, he's going to be part of Fantasy Sports Network, giving you lots of picks, letting you make some money, hopefully along the way as well. And
someone's got to make it. It ain't me.
Yeah, it probably won't be me either. I'm in the wrong industry for that. But thank you very much, Eric. Appreciate the time.
Thanks, man.